Hey everybody, this is Andre covering for Kevin on the Kevin Breeze channel, and in this video we're going to be comparing the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G and the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. You can get both of these phones factory unlocked for all major carriers. To get more information on prices and availability of these phones, be sure to check the link in the description. These links will take you directly to the phones on Samsung's website, where you're going to be able to find some nice trade deals that you might not be able to find anywhere else. That being said, let's get started. The Samsung Galaxy A51 5G has a 6.5-inch Super AMOLED display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 405, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of 87.2%. The Samsung Galaxy S20 FE has a 6.5-inch 120Hz Super AMOLED display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 407, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of 84.8%. Now side by side, both of these displays look very similar, and for the most part, it's really going to be the same as far as quality goes. The bezels on the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE are slightly larger, and I prefer smaller bezels, so by default I do like the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G's display just a little bit better. The Samsung Galaxy S20 FE does have a slightly higher PPI than the A51 5G, so there is a little bit of a difference. Technically, the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE just generally has a better quality display, but in practice, it's unlikely that you'll notice the difference that much. Both of these cameras have hole punches for the front-facing camera at 32 megapixels. I really like the design for these cameras. It looks really clean and gives the phone a nice modern look. Now, as for which one is actually better, we will see that in the demonstration later in this video. But since they're both 32 megapixels, it's most likely going to come down to which one has a better sensor. And since the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE is a flagship phone, and the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G is not, I would guess that the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE is going to have a slightly better quality front-facing camera than the A51 5G, but we'll see more of that later in the video. Now, both of these phones have 128 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD expansion. This is a great amount of storage. No matter what your situation is, you're gonna have plenty of space. If you're taking a lot of photos and videos, or if you have a lot of larger apps that take a lot of space up, it's always good to have more storage space than you need. And at 128 gigabytes, that's definitely a lot. To put it into perspective, iPhones start out at 64 gigabytes of internal storage, and they don't have the opportunity, and they don't have microSD card expansion. So with these phones, you're already better off. Both of these phones have some stuff that you might use on a daily basis downloaded onto them. As you can see, the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G right now has a little bit more as far as photos and videos go than the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE, which doesn't really have that many at all. But at the end of the day, neither of them are taking up more than 30% of the available storage, so there's definitely a lot of room on these phones. Now, the first big difference we're encountering here is that the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G has no wireless charging, whereas the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE does. This is just another reminder that while they are close in performance, the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE is a flagship phone, whereas the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G is not. So you are going to get a few different features on the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE that you typically find in flagship phones that you won't find on the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G. That being said, both of these phones do have in-display fingerprint scanners, as well as the option to use Face Unlock. It's really nice to have a couple different options to choose from. I personally don't like using a pin at all. I think it's a really outdated old way of unlocking a phone. And having not only Face Unlock, but also a fingerprint scanner is really nice. In comparison, the iPhone doesn't have a fingerprint scanner at all, and sometimes when it's not convenient to use Face Unlock, that can be really annoying. So it's nice to see that these two phones have both options. Let's go ahead and give those fingerprint scanners a try, starting with the A51 5G. One more time. There we go, it's very fast and responsive, no problem there. There we go. Again, both of them have really fast and responsive fingerprint scanners that are easy to use. I have no complaints. As for if either of them is better than the other, they're really the same thing and they work really well. Taking a look at the camera setups, starting with the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G, we have a 48 megapixel rear camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 5 megapixel depth sensing camera, and a 5 megapixel macro camera. With the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE, we have a 12 megapixel rear camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, and an 8 megapixel telephoto lens with 3x optical zoom. Now you might be wondering, why would a flagship phone have less megapixels than a non-flagship phone, especially when they're both Samsung Galaxy variants? Well, one really important thing to think about when considering the megapixels of a camera is that it's not just the megapixels that determines how good the camera is. It's very possible and really likely that the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE, being a flagship phone that's most likely gonna have a better quality camera in general, has a much better sensor than the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G, even though the megapixels are higher. Giving the camera higher megapixels will do a little bit to balance out that difference. So let's give them a try and see how they look. So this is the camera of the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G. As you can see, it's a pretty decent camera. The image is really crisp, which I really like, and the colors are good as well. It focuses really well. The only issue that I'm seeing right now is sometimes if you focus in the wrong spot, it gets really bright and it's a little bit challenging to adjust back to how it's supposed to be. You can control the exposure a little bit with this slider on the bottom, but at the same time, it would be nice if it just didn't have this issue. Again, it's not that big a deal because as long as you focus in the right spot and get the right angle, it's not going to make a big difference. And the image is really crisp, so that's good. Checking out the ultra wide camera, it is really wide and I really like that. Again, with the exposure, it's kind of annoying to have to change this every time you change the angle, but overall it's not too bad. Going into macro mode, as you can see, we get some good details right here. One thing I don't really like about this macro mode is unless you turn the exposure all the way down, which then makes it look super dark, you get this glare that kind of ruins the image, in my opinion. Now this might just be the specific lighting and angle, a lot of different factors in this image itself, but I'm really not a big fan. Now the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE doesn't have a macro camera at all, but it does have a telephoto lens, which in some cases can be a substitution for a macro camera, so we'll check that out in a bit. But overall, the macro camera isn't bad, but I definitely could see room for improvement. It's really not that great, and even though it's a nice tool to have when you're doing photography, unless I had a great editing software, I wouldn't use this a whole lot. This is the front-facing camera. I'm honestly really impressed by it. It has a really crisp image and the colors are balanced out well. Let's try portrait mode. This is the portrait mode of the camera. Not a whole lot to say about it. It's really nice. The image is crisp and the background is blurred out appropriately, and you can change the blur of the background on this, which is also really nice. With some backgrounds, you might want it more blurred out, sometimes less. It's nice to have the option to control it. I would say when it comes to photography and that sort of thing, the more control you have over the settings of the image, the better, and this is definitely nice. This is the regular camera for the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. I can tell that the image is a little bit more crisp than the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G, and the focusing issue doesn't seem to be as much of a problem. It does get a little bit bright when you focus in the wrong place, but it doesn't completely overwhelm the image like it did with the A51 5G. Now this phone doesn't have a macro camera, but let's see what the telephoto lens can do. So it's zoomed at 3x right now, and the quality of the image is really good. Really, as I'm testing this out, I personally think that this gets a lot better detail just with the telephoto lens zooming in than the macro camera on the A51 5G did in general. Most of this is due to the fact that the glare isn't in the way of the image for this phone. I think this phone does handle lighting a lot better. And if you're using a phone mainly for photography and that type of content creation, then I feel like this is gonna be a really great option because not only can it zoom in and be used kind of like a macro camera, but you can also take longer distance photos with better quality. And I think that's really nice. Taking a look at the ultra wide camera now, As far as how wide it is, it's really the same, but the lighting for this camera as well as the colors are a lot better. Even though the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G did have decent balance as far as the colors and lighting went with the ultra-wide camera, I think it's just overall better with the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE. This is the front-facing camera for the S20 FE. As far as the image quality goes, I do think that it's around the same. Maybe it's a little bit more detailed with the S20 FE, whereas the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G was a little bit sharper. And as far as the colors go, the colors are definitely not as bright and vivid with the S20 FE. And on one hand, it can be a good thing because sometimes really vivid colors can be distracting. But I honestly like the color balance for the front-facing camera better on the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G. Here, the colors are just a little bit too dull for me, and even though the image quality and clarity is a little bit better, I prefer a little bit more vivid colors. So here, even though I really like the Samsung Galaxy A51's portrait mode and front-facing camera, I do like the portrait mode on this a little bit better. Not only are the subject and the background blended a little bit better, but there are also more options to control on this. Not only can you control the blur amount with this phone, but you can also choose different modes that are better for different situations. Like this one, for example, I don't know when you're actually going to use this or if you're going to use it that often, but if you're doing lots of photography and content creation and that sort of thing, then it's nice to have different options to play around with so you can get better pictures. So again, even though I'm not a huge fan of how the colors look on the front-facing camera for this phone, compared to the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G, it's really compensated for with how good the quality is of the image and how good the portrait mode is. Really, at the end of the day, if you're mainly using your phone for photography, you're most likely going to have a good editing app too, and you can fix the colors really easily, whereas you can't really fix the quality and detail of an image that well with an editing tool. So in general, although I think both of these phones have really great cameras, I think the camera for the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE is quite a bit better than the camera for the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G. Of course, used independently, the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G does have an impressive camera, but compared to the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE, it's really not quite as good. It definitely has a few quirks in it that the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE doesn't have. And even though I think the colors on the front-facing camera for the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G are a little bit better in my opinion, the overall quality and what you can do with the front-facing camera in the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE is better. In addition to this, I don't really like the macro mode on the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G. Due to the glare and the way it handles exposure, I really wouldn't use it much, if at all. Whereas with the telephoto lens on the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE, I could definitely see replacing a macro camera with that and just using the telephoto lens to zoom in on something and still getting those details, and also using it for other purposes like long distance photos. It just has a wider range of use and overall is just better. When it comes to video, the main difference between these two phones is the Samsung Galaxy A51 shoots in qualities up to 4K at 30 frames per second, whereas the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE shoots in qualities up to 4K at 60 frames per second. Now, both of these shoot that quality in the rear and front cameras. So really, the difference is super small. And I definitely wouldn't base whether you're getting one phone or the other on the quality of the video because it's gonna be roughly the same. The camera for the S20 FE is definitely better enough to the point where I would personally lean in that direction if photography and content creation of that type were my main focus. Now internally, both phones are getting 6GB of RAM. The Samsung Galaxy A51 5G has the Exynos 980 processor, and keep in mind, this is for the unlocked variant. This specific device right here is the unlocked variant. If you get it through a carrier, it's gonna be a slightly different processor, which means a slight difference in performance. But for the purposes of this video, this is the unlocked variant. Now, the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE does have the Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 processor. Let's take a look at their Geekbench 5 scores. As you can see here, major difference. The Samsung Galaxy S20 FE is definitely gonna have a lot more processing power. When it comes to high performance activities like video editing and gaming and that sort of thing, I would definitely say the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE is going to be the better device for that type of activity. Now, if you're just taking pictures and doing photo editing and content consumption, and then your basic mobile activities like making calls and sending text messages, you probably won't notice the difference that much. But once you get into those higher performance activities, it's definitely nice to have more processing power. And in that case, the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE is definitely going to have an edge. Now, these phones do have a very similar battery. They both have 4,500 milliamp hour batteries, which is great. Gonna give you great battery life and power out of that. The difference is the Samsung Galaxy A51 5G supports 15 watt fast charging, whereas the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE supports 25 watt fast charging. Now, this isn't really a big difference. Really, you're probably not gonna notice it in most cases. Just if you have a fast charger, one of them is gonna charge a little bit faster. So I definitely wouldn't make a decision based on that. It's really not that big a deal. So in conclusion, which one of these is a better phone? As far as all the specs goes and everything else, I definitely would say the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE is the better phone. But when it comes down to which device you should get, it really depends on your needs. If you're not going to be doing a whole lot of high performance activities and just want a mid to high end device to do a lot of content consumption and do some light gaming every now and then I would say the Samsung Galaxy A51 is really all you need. But if you're doing more high performance activities, or if something like photography or videography is really important to you, you do a lot of video or photo editing, or do some heavy gaming, then the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE is probably going to be a better option because it has almost double the processing power and the camera has a lot better quality and more features that you can use. But at the end of the day, both are great devices, and I think both of them really provide a lot of value. Again, if you want to learn more about the prices and availability, or just learn more about the devices themselves, be sure to check the link in the description because those links will take you right to the phones on Samsung's website where you can get some good trade deals that you might not be able to find anywhere else. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.